Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Kévin Almeida Cheminant. I did my PhD thesis here in Krakow at the Institute of Nuclear Physics. It was done with using resources from Cyfronet within the CREDO collaboration and the CREDO grant. So the title of this thesis is a search for ultra-energy photons through pre-shower effect with gamma telescopes. So it's a topic that falls within what we call astroparticle physics. And it was done under the supervision of Dr. Darush Gura here at the institute. So as I said, it's a field what we call astroparticle physics. And astroparticle physics, one thing that we study a lot are cosmic rays. So cosmic rays are charged particles that are produced in the universe, and they travel through space and eventually interact with the Earth. In my thesis, we focus on, so if you look at this figure on the right, you have what we call the energy spectrum. So it's the flux of cosmic rays as a function of the energy. And as you can see, it falls rapidly as the energy increases. And it is what we call the ultra high energy domain. So many orders of magnitude higher than what's produced at CERN in Switzerland. You only have 1 particle per square kilometers per century, so very little. So there are many questions that remain to be answered about those ultra energy cosmic rays. What they're made of, what kind of source produced them, and also through which mechanism they manage to obtain those excessively high energies. One way to study this, to answer these questions, is to look at what we call ultra-energy photons. So instead of charged particles, here we're looking at particles of light. And so far they have never been observed, so we are trying to develop a new method to search for them. One thing to remember, to note, is that at these energies, particles like ultra-energy photons or ultra-energy cosmic rays, they don't directly reach the surface of the Earth. They interact with the atmosphere, and they produce what we call extensive air showers, which are cascades of secondary particles in which you will find many protons, electrons, muons, all sorts of particles, a whole zoo of them. And this is those particles that will eventually reach the surface of the Earth. One way to observe those extensive air showers is to use what we call gamma ray telescopes, or simply like gamma ray arrays, where basically the Cherenkov light that is produced in those cascades, the Cherenkov light is just a blue light that is emitted by charged particles that go faster than the speed of light in that medium. So with Cherenkov telescopes, you can actually observe that as the light is reflected onto the mirror of the telescope, back onto a camera, and form images onto the camera. These images can actually be described by a set of parameters called HELAS parameters. So it's just a set of geometrical parameters, and also like intensity wise and so on. So this is this figure right here. And the question we asked is, like, can gamma ray telescopes can actually search for those ultra energy photons? Because normally gamma ray telescopes are only sensitive to much lower energies, and they never used to search for such extensive air showers. So the question is, can we actually join the search that other experiments are already carrying on? So to do that, we simulated the whole chain where you have an ultra energy photon traveling through space and eventually interacting with the geomagnetic field, producing what we call the pre-shower effect, which is here on the right side here. So your ultra energy photon interact with the geomagnetic field. You have the production of an electron and a positron pair, which will emit lower energy photons. So this is the first step of the simulation chain. Once you have this done, you can simulate those extensive air showers plus the Cherenkov light in the extensive air shower. This is shown here in this part of the drawing. So you have many different components within this extensive air shower. You have electromagnetic particles, hadronic particles, muonic particles, and so on. And you have, of course, those Cherenkov cones that are produced by these particles. The thing is, to produce those extensive air showers, you have to set up a bit, you have like parameters to set for the simulations. So because in gamma ray astronomy, you are highly dominated by this cosmic ray background, not only you have to simulate this pre-shower effect, so this ultra energy photon, but you also have to simulate this cosmic ray background. So it requires extensive simulations. We also have to give some parameters. So these simulations are done such that the ultra energy photons comes from just over the horizon from the northern direction, and I will explain very soon why. And We have also to limit the size of the area within which this ultra-energy photons is passing through. So this is this R max value, such that the core of the extensive air showers does not fall too far from the telescopes and are still detectable. And of course, you can simulate either a point source of ultra-energy photons or a diffuse source of ultra-energy photons, depending on what kind of source, what kind of astrophysical source you want to include in your analysis. So of course, as I said, in these simulations, they're very extensive because there are Monte Carlo simulations. You have a lot of particles in the cascades. You have sometimes millions, billions. You have to follow each one of them. You have to see how they will interact, what kind of particles they will produce once they interact. So it's very, very demanding resource-wise, and it's of course not something you can do on your own computer just like that. So in 2017, with Credo, with this collaboration, we applied for grants to have access to Prometheus at Cyfronet. In my personal use, it was mostly for storage and for the available CPUs for job submission for these simulations, because sometimes the simulations could take up to 3 days, and I had to run tens of thousands of them to get significant statistical samples for the future analysis. And of course, like terabytes and terabytes of data used for this multivariate analysis that I will present soon. And of course, it has been quite a great experience, and I want to thank Cyfronet because they were extremely supportive. Like always, whenever I needed some help, it was really not a problem. Like within 24 hours, I would have a response, and it was very, very nice to work for these 4 years with the team at Cyfronet. And finally, so in this simulation chain, sorry. You have to simulate the detector's response, so the telescope's response to this Cherenkov light that was produced in the extensive air showers. So this is really the last step here. For that, we took the example of the Cherenkov telescope array, which is being built currently in La Palma. You must have heard of La Palma, where there's this huge volcanic explosion that kind of prevent telescopes from working right now. So we use this example of array. And so once we had simulated everything, we got what we call those ELAS parameters. So if you remember, it's how we characterize those images that are formed, and you get these kinds of distributions. So the idea here now is to find a way to get rid of the cosmic ray background by putting some sort of cut to exclude the cosmic ray background. Of course, when you have all these parameters, it's not very easy to do. So what we do, we put them into boosted decision trees that would put multiple cuts on different variables, so on these variables, to find a way to exclude the cosmic ray background. So this is the results that you see here. On the left here, the green histogram is the cosmic ray background. On the left here of this one as well. And here it's on the left is for point source, and on the right is for diffuse source, so red and blue. You can see that you get a rather good efficiency, meaning that you can get rid of the cosmic ray background without losing too many photon events. And this is actually pretty good because that means that you can run an observation campaign with those telescopes and hope to exclude the cosmic ray background and see those ultra-energy photons that are being searched by many people in the community right now. So next, what you do, you want to know like how many events you would expect to observe within a given time frame. So here we focused on a typical observation time of about 30 hours, which is quite a lot actually already for gamma ray telescopes. And so we calculate the number of events based on existing scenarios like super heavy dark matter decay, or interaction of cosmic rays with the light in the universe, and also from upper limits that were derived by other experiments on the ultra-energy photon flux. So the highest number we get for 30 hours of observation is this number here. So it's rather low. It's especially for a diffuse source, it's rather low. So we don't expect to see many events if we run the telescope for just 30 hours. But of course, you can extend this time for significantly. Nevertheless, what you can do is to search for point sources. So there were already like limits on the point sources of ultra-energy photons set by other experiments. On the left from the galactic center, mostly on the left by the Auger experiment in Argentina, and on the right by TA experiment in America. And so this is here what you see you see like some point source limits. So what we can see it's like try to figure out how many events we would expect for actual point sources. But what happens with those point sources is you can have what we call gamma ray bursts. So this is like a sudden explosion and a huge gamma ray explosion where you have many particles emitted, and you can boost these upper limits by a given factor. So you have multiple experiments who run this thing, run this analysis, look for those gamma ray bursts, HESS, magic telescopes, and so on. And you can have a boosting of this ultra energy photons flux. And this is what you see here. When you apply this boosting, the highest you can get to is about 0.17 events for 30 hours of observation, which is actually rather good. So if you search for point sources of ultra energy photons with CTA, so this telescope I simulated, and you have the chance to end up on the gamma ray burst event, you can expect about 0.17 events. So this is actually a really good number, and it means that eventually we can run more observation campaign on those gamma ray bursts to find those ultra energy photons. So I come to the conclusion here. So using a non-standard mode of observation, you can use you can have gamma ray telescope searching for ultra energy photons and eventually observe them. So it means that there's a new whole science that can be done with those gamma ray telescopes, kind of science that we're not dedicated to in the first place. Of course, you have a lower event rate of ultra energy photons because production models do not, in general, produce a lot of them. So there's always the limits of physics, right? And there's not much you can do about it. Of course, this analysis can be performed on other experiments, like other telescopes, FACT, not just CTA, but other telescopes, and especially FACT telescope, which is also in the same area. And the CTA consortium that I introduced is also open to outsiders' observational proposals. So it's actually quite nice because it means I can actually run this observation that I was talking about. And for more information, I have left here the link of the paper that was published on this topic. So I thank you very much. I thank you for selecting my thesis for this competition. And yes, thank you very much.